truth. There is no one definitive black and white answer. It is always going to be sort of shades of gray. I just have a hard time understanding why there's this fear that's rising up around the discussion. And that, to me, that's a big red flag.
Well, the system knows that as it consolidates power, people subconsciously are smart and understand there's a threat. So the system is very adept at projecting people's natural anxiety over things going in the wrong direction onto some boogeyman. And the social engineers, they know that. We talked a lot when we went to dinner last night, Billy, about media tricks or trying to keep people in the box. And, you know, when you were speaking about it, you know, all these data points were coming to my mind. It was, you were absolutely on target with how they're trying to control reality. Speak to that.
Well, I can use my own example. You know, I'm essentially lower middle class. You know, no one from my family went to college. I obviously have some gifts that are valuable. The minute I entered into a bigger, wider swath of media, I was sort of categorized. And when I resisted the categorization, I was demonized. You know, now somebody would say, well, that's just rock and roll. But having been in that game for 20 years, there's this overt pressure to put yourself in that particular narrative. And if you won't, you will be sort of labeled and tagged. And it's fascinating for me now to go back and read articles about myself from 18 years ago where I'm sort of being put into categories and labeled a certain way. And then it's that weird thing, it's like Kafka, you know, you're accused of a crime, you don't know what you did that was so wrong, and then you spend the rest of your life defending it. And so I'm very keen to watch how other people are demonized from media entry points. When somebody rises up with a grand new idea, the way it's either co-opted, you know, like, oh, let's assume, for the sake of argument, that the Occupy movement started as an organic expression of somebody, you know, somebody said, let's do this. 10 people, 4 people. You saw right away where it was co-opted. You know what I mean? Or other media forces tried to disclaim it and distance. And those are the ways that the media sort of tries to take things that they can't control and put it in a box. And then they start to write the articles. What does this mean? Bloomberg comes out and says, Occupy New York is bad for business. So the common person says, oh, that's hurting us. Well, in the greater expression of freedom, maybe it's a good thing that we're having this dissent. Maybe the small downside of blocking traffic or something in the greater whole is a necessity.
Exactly. I mean, if America, 5% of the world population, developed half the wealth because it had more freedom than anybody else, not that we were perfect, then how is it bad that people are exercising their liberty? Even if they don't have all the answers, at least they're trying to get involved. So the real question is, why is Bloomberg demonizing it?
Or the way Homeland Security coordinated to try to take down everybody's protests, you know? I think those are all a really big red flag.
Why are they so scared of people even exercising their First Amendment?
That's a really... That's a question I don't have the answer for. I think it's one of those things where you can only look at the reaction to gauge that there must be really something vital going on, or there wouldn't have been such a violent reaction against the Occupy movement if what the Occupy movement was representing as a whole wasn't threatening to somebody. You know, and that's why they try to sort of categorize it down into boxes. It's bad for business. It could lead to violence. It hasn't yet, but it might. You know, this kind of implied nuance. Yet, it was mostly just a bunch of people in tents, you know. And I particularly didn't agree with all of the Occupy message. I'm not here to wave the flag for it. I think there's certain aspects of troubling aspects about it, particularly the idea of wealth distribution. You know, in my particular instance, you know, I came from a family that didn't have anything. Everything I've earned in life, I made myself with songs that I wrote. So when somebody starts talking about how I've got to give to somebody that didn't do that, well, that's a deeper conversation. It doesn't mean I don't have a social concern. It doesn't mean I don't want to contribute to charities. It doesn't mean I don't want to help my fellow man.
But if you look at Austin, where I live, all these young kids of middle class or wealthy, they don't appreciate anything on average because it was all given to them. And again, America's not been perfect, but it's been better than most other systems because it was an avenue that allowed your natural gifts to be expressed. Whereas in an old world model, it was completely shut down by the elite. And that's what I found, is that you have these crony capitalists who are really anti-free market, anti-libertarian ideas, and they basically are trying to get a big government system so that they have government power to shut down their competition.
I think it's a really valid point. I can only speak from my perspective as an artist because, you know, there's different terms that you can use. You know, outlier is one of them. You know, if you exist sort of outside of a given system, and I've been in the system, I've been outside the system, and now I'm probably standing right on the edge of the system. It's you know, like you and I were talking about it today. I did this thing at South by Southwest where I gave an hour talk with an author who's an expert in social media. He's written this book. Brian Solis is his name. We had a 1-hour discussion in front of 1,500 people, and the headline reads, "Billy Corgan rants." You know what I mean? I don't understand how that's a rant. An hour discussion, a sober discussion with two intelligent people about a very complex set of ideas, opinions included. That's not a rant, but that's that kind of language that gets encoded in. Don't be too smart, don't step outside, don't stand for anything. And I think what I really see with young people now is they're responding to passion. And so us as people getting a little older in life, we have to help direct that passion. And what I love, for me, when you really hit the right target is when you talk about liberty and what liberty really means, the responsibility of liberty, the responsibility of freedom. It's not just this utopian anarchy. We have a responsibility to each other. What is that responsibility? Well, that should be an open debate. What is your responsibility as a man, as a parent, as a citizen of Texas, to your community, to the people who work here in your business? What is your responsibility? You have to address all those things. You have to openly debate them within your own mind, and then you're enough of a humanitarian or an insane person or whatever. You want to take those ideas into the marketplace to be bandied about. That's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. You know, even if I disagreed with 99% of what you were saying, I agree with why you believe in what you're doing. I agree with many things you say, but what I really respect is that you're willing to put yourself into the center of that argument and make that, because that is what our country is supposed to be about. Our country is supposed to be about innovation, supposed to be about intelligence. We're supposed to be what was it, old Bush, we're the beacon on the hill. Okay, well, are we the beacon on the hill? Well, we should be.
Instead, we become a beacon for torture and empire and lies and propaganda. How did we go from, on average, putting out, you know, the most informed people, the most patents, innovation, trailblazing? I mean, the world said, wow, America's it, to now the world says, man, this is where the evil comes from.
I don't know. I mean, you know, you can make an argument that if you want to put the evil in quotations, that the evil's been there all along. You know, we engaged in slave trade at some point. At some point, we took advantage of the Native Americans. We broke treaties. You know, as you said, we haven't been perfect. We're a rolling big ball of dust, like peanuts. You know, like Linus. You know.
I think that's it. I think it's that we've been good and evil, and because we've been powerful, when we do shine, it's wonderful. But when we're dark, it's very, very bad.
Yeah, I think it's a dark time, and I think. You know, as somebody who listens, you know, what we all need to do is we need to start looking at what success looks like. You know, you use the term InfoWar, you know, right? So what is victory in the InfoWar? Right now, at some point, just resisting seems like victory because there's so little dissent. It's shocking. If you and I could go back in a time machine to the 1960s when people were protesting what they were protesting, that generation would be shocked at how little dissent there is right now. What are we in, 9 wars, 7 wars?
Yeah.
Drones?
Well, proxy wars, it's like 14, yeah.
Okay.
And
drones in 11 countries? I mean, where is this sort of dissent? And particularly, I would say, from the artistic community. You know what I mean? And I'm including myself in this criticism. Where is the artistic reaction? In the 1960s, you had Neil Young, Ohio, and you had these great protest songs. Blowing in the Wind was a protest song. where is the artistic response?
It's almost like there's a giving up. But as you
No, but I would say this, Alex, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you know, there is a relationship that exists between performer and an audience, or you know, a singer in the song, right? At some point, and this is where I'm trying to answer your question, there isn't the hunger in the audience for that message. You understand? I could make an album of protest songs. There's not an audience that wants to hear that. In fact, oftentimes when I've used, like, say, my Twitter account to lodge a protest or lodge a point, I get this response back that says, just be quiet and entertain. So the role of the entertainer as a social icon or an agent for social change has been diminished. And I don't think that's by accident. Because people in the late 60s, like Neil Young, like John Lennon, they had a tremendous amount of power with the counterculture and with the youth. And maybe there's a reason there that the people like that have been pushed aside to where that message is no longer necessary or required. A lot of people feel like, don't tell me what to do. That's sort of the general vibe in the culture. But then I say, okay, if you don't want me to tell you what to do, that's totally fine. But what do you stand for? And most people don't have an answer. That's what I'm saying. At least in your case, you're saying, I stand for liberty. And you'll interpret your own version of that. And I have a version that's different than yours, right? But at least we stand for the common idea of liberty. I mean, I'm a beneficiary of one of the great countries in the history of the world. I'm some weirdo that figured out how to do something, and there was a system in place that allowed me to rise up and do it. If I'd grown up in Soviet Union or whatever, I probably would be working on a dock, right? So I appreciate that part of it. But it's weird to me when you have an audience that's basically turned that social icon into nothing more than a prop that's like a wind-up toy.
We talked about that, the change in the people, that you know, that state of just a malaise or a type of sleeping narcolepsy. I repeat to the viewers out there the experience of the way people have changed, because I've seen this in the last 10 years, the way fans have changed.
Well, I've really noticed that social networking, those types of things, Facebook, that's become sort of people's pride. Okay, so little things you see. I used to sign a lot of autographs, sign almost no autographs now. Now it's a picture, because the social approval comes from, look, I met this celebrity, here's the picture to prove it. It's not a physical document, it's a virtual document. Well, the same thing happens in your interactions with people. I'm no longer a real person most of the time. When they talk to me, it's kind of like, you know what I mean? They've grown up with you, but you're sort of like, you're as real as this table or something. It's like,
well, to repeat your words, you said before it was, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Corgan, but I really like you to sign this. I really like your work. And you're like, hey, Billy, let's do a photo. And my wife said this years ago, just in my own interactions. She's like, wow, it's like they know you, and it's like automatic. It's like, hey, and they just grab on you.
Yeah, but it's the downside of the virtual reality. You know, somebody could sit there and watch 24 hours a day of my band or me talking on YouTube. So there's a level of familiarity that comes with that. But then there's also this degrading of, let's call it, social structure. I grew up in a world that if you didn't know somebody, you referred to them as sir, you were formal at first, and all that's been stripped away. Now, that's not a huge indication of something.
No, but it bums me out. When I say sir to people, they act like I'm almost lower class, that I'm groveling to them, instead of, no, I'm giving the respect because I want it.
Yeah, there's an erosion of respect for the family, an erosion for the formality of life, which I never saw as a bad thing. And I mean, like, people will say, oh, what do you watch on TV? I said, I don't watch anything except a few sports, because I can't stand to watch the American male be, whatever they've turned the American male to.
Castrated.
That's a good word for it. I can't stand it. I mean, I just can't watch that anymore.
Well, they put that image out. I mean, that's in the documents on purpose. And I don't cover that enough, but I think that's one of the hearts of their system, is to turn women, you know, they claimed it was feminism, but now it's total objects.
Don't you think it's weird, just to bring up a current event, all of a sudden, and I'm certainly no fan of Rush Limbaugh. But again, I live in a society that's supposed to respect free speech. Okay, so that's his